My entitled stepbrother made fun of me for being a former escort and called me a WHRE, so I kicked him out of my house and he ended up on the streets. I have never gotten along with my stepbrother, and it's not due to lack of trying. My dad married his mom when we were both 16 and he made it clear that I was in his way. The first time I went to him to say that we should get along, he made fun of the outfit I was wearing and told me to dress appropriately in his house. I told him that he had no right to tell me what to wear, and he just laughed in my face. From then on, he started blaming me for the small things around the house. He would leave crumbs of food all over the couch and tell our parents that it was me who did it. If the dishes weren't done, then it was because I didn't do them. I could go on because he never stopped. Until one day when I was 18, I had a huge fight with my dad and left the house. It was a stupid decision and I paid the price for it by being tricked into working as an escort. Even though that job forced me to throw my dignity away, it was the only way I could eat or afford an apartment. Thankfully, I got a new job when I was 25 and was able to escape. Now I'm working as a nurse and am married to a wonderful husband. However, even though my relationship with my dad is fixed, my stepbrother still has a vendetta against me. At every family gathering, he never fails to mention what I did in my past and how I don't deserve what I have right now. I have told him many times to just cut it out, but he never listens. Recently, he got into some trouble with the IRS and got kicked out of his own house. He had the audacity to ask if his family could move into my house for a few weeks. I was tempted to say no, but I thought that this was our chance to finally start getting along. I invited them into our home and did my best to accommodate everyone. But my stepbrother still didn't get the memo. While his wife was helping around the house, he was too busy leaving his clothes all over the place. He would come home, throw his socks on the dining table and snatch the TV remote from my son so he could watch football. He also refused to help with any laundry or dishes because he was too busy doing what I just said. Well, I tolerated that because he was only here for a few weeks and I wanted to make peace. However, he decided to go too far when I confronted him about his behavior. Last night, I went to him and told him that he can't treat this like a hotel, so he needs to take some responsibility around the house. I asked him to cut the grass in our lawn because my husband was going to stay late at work. He could have said that he didn't have time, or that he would do it next morning, but instead he just blew up on me. He said that I can't tell him what to do and that he was tired of me. Then, he said, a WHRE like you should know her place. Or maybe I should go and tell your son what kind of a woman his mother is? That crossed boundaries that didn't even exist, and I absolutely lost it. I told him to gather all his belongings and get out of my house right now. He quickly retracted his words, and said that they don't have anywhere else to go at night. But I didn't care, since he should have thought of that before lashing out at me again. I said that if he doesn't leave immediately, then I am calling the cops on him for trespassing. That threat wasn't empty, and they left. I watched as his wife yelled at him for being responsible for making them sleep on the street. My entitled stepbrother made fun of me for being a former escort and called me a WHRE, so I kicked him out of my house and he ended up on the streets. He quickly retracted his words, and said that they don't have anywhere else to go at night. But I didn't care, since he should have thought of that before lashing out at me again. I said that if he doesn't leave immediately, then I am calling the cops on him for trespassing. That threat wasn't empty, and they left. I watched as his wife yelled at him for being responsible for making them sleep on the street. Edit, it has been a week since that day. My stepbrother, as always, took to social media to condemn me and tell everyone what I did. But what he didn't count on was me telling the story from my perspective in the comments of his post. When people read that, they were quick to dismiss him when he asked for help and no one allowed him into their house. I guess people were afraid that he would treat the women in their house just like he treated me. So he did what he always did. He left his family at our parents' house and showed up at my doorstep to harass me. He started going on about how I have always been jealous of him, and kicking him out was just a way to get back at him. I told him that he's living in a dream, and that he needs to wake up. And then I called the cops and got a restraining order against him because he once again called me a WHRE right in front of my door camera.
My parents neglected me and told me I was a burden my entire life. Years later they went bankrupt and are asking me for money. For as long as I can remember, my parents have treated me like I intruded upon their life. They had me when they were 19, and still wanted to enjoy their life. So they would leave me off at home and go to parties or even overseas trips. You see, the doctors told my mom that it would be highly unlikely for her to have another kid after giving birth to me. So they sometimes acted like I didn't exist, and just pawned me off to others. The babysitter they hired for me hated me, and I literally had to beg her for my food. She would make me do all the chores so she could get paid extra, and get physical if I refused. Whenever I went to my parents to tell them how she treated me, they would tell me to stop bothering them and that they were too busy to talk about kid stuff. This one time, all my friends were really excited because our school was taking us on a trip. But we needed permission from our parents, so I went to ask them to sign the papers. They were dressing up to go to a dinner date, and kept ignoring me when all I wanted was for them to sign a damn paper. The kid me was so sad that they didn't care about me that I cried myself to sleep that night. But I wish it had ended there. When I was 8, my mom became pregnant and the doctors called it a miracle. And to my surprise, my parents spoiled their second son like they had never spoiled me. They bought new clothes for him every month, went to all his school events and always canceled their plans if he was sick. The thing is, they still treated me like I wasn't even their son. They still never celebrated my birthday and instead used that time to once again go on couples-only dates. But when it was my brother's turn, they would throw a huge party in the most expensive restaurant in town. I actually got fed up one day and just decided to ask them why they treated us so differently, and did they not love me? Their response still haunts me till this day. You were a burden, but he is a miracle that we will be forever thankful for. I realized then that I would never get anything from them, and began working for my own stuff. I got a job in high school and saved up enough money to move out at 18. They didn't even react when I told them I wasn't going to live in their house anymore, and my brother was just happy to have all their love to himself. I still loved them in my head, and wanted them to at least say goodbye, but they didn't even do that. I had to wait 2 years to enter college because I didn't get a 100% scholarship, and had to save up money to pay my own tuition. My mother would sometimes call to ask me how I was doing, but would always end up just telling me about her problems instead of helping me. When I did eventually enter college, I decided to completely cut them off. It did wonders for my mental health, and I met my wonderful wife in one of my classes. She was like the light in the dark for me, and I told her about how my parents had treated me. So she helped me get over my trauma, and in doing so, I fell in love with her. The stupid me ended up asking her to marry me after just 5 months of dating, but surprisingly, she didn't say no. She said she would gladly accept any ring I bought for her, even if it was an engagement ring. I was really happy but also got a wake-up call, and didn't rush into our marriage. Instead, I worked on building my own business from the ground up that ended up being really successful. My degree was centered around civil engineering, and my company basically took contracts from whoever wanted work done on their house. It generated so much revenue that I was able to buy a house that me and my girlfriend could both live in. She stayed with me through all that struggle, and any doubt in my mind had been erased. So I took her on a vacation to Paris, and this time, I proposed properly with a ring in my hand. It's been 2 years since then, and I am enjoying my married life to the fullest. But the only thing that could destroy my happiness came back into my life. Last week, out of nowhere, I received a call from my father. This man had not talked to me in years and didn't even know I was married. That being said, I wasn't really angry at my parents anymore since my wife had enabled me to move on, so I decided to talk to him. I took the call near my wife and put it on speaker. First he asked how I was and how life was treating me, so I told him about my business. There was a sudden shift in his tone from sad to a happy one. He wasted some time by telling me about how my mom was still attractive, and then finally got to the point. I don't know what I expected, but I should have known that he still didn't love me or even wanted to love me. It turns out, he had recently been fired from his job and had no savings whatsoever. My parents had literally declared bankruptcy to get out of some payments, but the bank was still demanding that they pay their mortgage. Bottom line, they wanted me to send them some money. I couldn't believe their audacity for a second, and had to do a double take. I asked about my brother, because he should have been old enough to earn by now. Well, all their love for him had gone down the drain, because he had dropped out of college and was just living off the allowance they gave him. That revelation was so ridiculous that I actually burst into laughter, and told my dad, "I'm sure you see the irony too. The son that you loved and treated like a king can't help you when you're in trouble. But the son that you neglected and called a burden is now successful, and you're begging him for money. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you help your parents?" My mom snatched the phone from him and started calling me ungrateful. She said that they had done their best to raise me, and took care of me while still in college, even though they could have easily abandoned me for adoption. In her opinion, I had an obligation to help them and pay them back for everything they did for me. At this point, my wife also started laughing, so my mom went completely ballistic, and began yelling at us for being a bunch of entitled kids. So I told her that the only thing she is going to get from me is a signed paper stating that I am no longer their child, and hung up.